A white paper bag slides across a pharmacy counter in Columbus. The patient taps a screen. A copay leaves a debit card. A pharmacist still counts the pills. The manager still counts something else. The sale has not closed. It has only changed rooms. Upstream, a manufacturer has posted a list price almost no one pays in full. Downstream, an employer or a public program has promised a drug benefit. Between those promises sits a company the patient cannot name. The pharmacy benefit manager does not make the molecule or write the script. It administers the benefit, ranks the drugs, and stands in the payment stream. That is the job on the contract. Health plans hire these managers to control prescription costs. That assignment is real and incomplete. The same intermediary can collect manufacturer rebates, bill a plan one price and pay a pharmacy another, and steer the fill toward a pharmacy that shares a parent company. One dispensed tablet can generate a list price, a confidential net price, a rebate check, a dispensing fee, a patient copay, and an internal transfer to a sister pharmacy. The patient sees one number. The system sees a stack that need not match. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission reported that the 6 largest United States pharmacy benefit managers handled more than 90% of prescriptions. A Government Accountability Office study of selected states independently documents the same class of firms administering drug benefits, negotiating rebates, and affecting drug pricing and pharmacy reimbursement. Intermediaries hired to restrain spending can also earn money from arrangements that make spending hard to audit. Commission staff analysis uses qualified language about incentives and potential effects. That caution is part of the record. It does not prove that every contract raises every patient's price. It does show that a small group of managers can influence which medicines millions of Americans receive, which pharmacies fill them, and how leftover cost is split. The bag is in the car. The real invoice is still moving. The difference is the entire story. American health plans did not always rent a gatekeeper for pills. For a long stretch of the 20th century, a pharmacy posted a cash price and a patient paid it, or a simple indemnity plan reimbursed a share after the fact. The pharmacist was the last person in the chain, and often the only one who touched the claim. Then coverage thickened. Employer plans added a plastic card that turned a bottle of tablets into an insured event. Medicaid treated outpatient drugs as a managed benefit rather than a miscellaneous receipt. In 2003, Congress passed the Medicare Modernization Act. In 2006, Medicare Part D began paying outpatient drug claims for tens of millions of older and disabled Americans. A plan that covers thousands of products, written by thousands of clinicians, dispensed at tens of thousands of counters, cannot price each claim by committee. It needs a processor. It needs a contracted network. It needs someone authorized to say yes, no, or not until you try another molecule first. That is why the hire happens. Complexity is a cost center. A mid-size employer or a regional insurer can purchase the stack as a service and carry a net pharmaceutical trend into a finance meeting that looks disciplined. The sales pitch is leverage. We will extract concessions you cannot extract alone. Rebate talks require claims files, counsel, and a credible threat to move share from one manufacturer to another. Network contracts require the power to promise volume and to drop a counter that will not take the rate. Utilization management requires nurses, software, and an appeals desk that can survive angry letters. Building that factory in-house is a multi-year capital project. Renting it is a line item. The blind spot is that the clerk acquired the power to write the menu, and the menu assigns volume. Volume is the only threat that works. Call the menu a formulary: preferred, non-preferred, excluded. A physician can still prescribe an excluded product. The benefit can still leave the claim unpaid or bury the product under prior authorization, step therapy, a lock that forces the fill through a designated specialty counter, or a copay large enough to turn a clinical preference into a household crisis. Patients feel insurance being difficult. The economic object is a negotiated marketplace hiding inside a clinical list. Manufacturers learned from the 1990s onward to compete on confidential concessions as well as on chemistry. A high list price joined to a large rebate can defeat a lower list price joined to a smaller rebate if the people ranking the list are scored on concessions collected or on net cost after those concessions. The sticker stays visible, the concession does not. Pharmacies often acquire inventory against the visible number. Patients facing deductibles or percentage coinsurance often pay against some version of it. The plan may be praised for the invisible one. Mail-order warehouses and later specialty counters stretched the clerk into a dispenser. Claim switching was no longer the whole business. Placement became the scarce resource. Which brand occupies the preferred tier this contract year? Which biosimilar waits in the corridor? Which independent pharmacy may handle a lucrative fill, and which is told to transfer the prescription across town? States saw the fog earlier than most households had a vocabulary for it. The Government Accountability Office review of selected states exists because legislatures began writing statutes on licensure, on disclosure of certain reimbursement practices, on the old gag clauses that once barred a pharmacist from saying that cash was cheaper than the copay, and on the terms under which a local pharmacy could be paid at all. Regulation arrived as a confession. If the hired specialist were a transparent utility, capitals would not be inventorying how to force the lights on. The patient believes the health plan bought a discount. The plan believes it bought a technician. The technician is compensated, in part, from the same negotiations that mark which product is cheap to the sponsor, which product is expensive at the register, and which address is allowed to complete the sale. Complexity was outsourced. The instruments that allocate volume went with it. Those instruments can lower a sponsor's net outlay. They can also rearrange winners without anyone at the counter learning the name of the firm that ranked the shelf. A benefits director is graded on trend. Pharmaceutical trend is a line that can wreck a renewal. The director hires a pharmacy benefit manager the way a harbor hires a pilot. The channel is supposedly known. The rocks are not. A lower net drug outlay, a predictable administrative bill, and a consultant slide that says the guarantee was met. The manager's incentives are plural, and that plurality is the character. An administrative fee is clean, a few dollars a claim, a per-member monthly charge, a fee for running prior authorization. The other streams are thicker. A share of manufacturer rebates retained rather than passed through. A payment for keeping a drug on the preferred tier while calling the payment something other than a rebate. Margin at a mail-order or specialty pharmacy inside the same holding company. Each stream can be defended as compensation for leverage. Each stream also grows when the underlying transaction is harder for the sponsor to reconstruct. Follow the manufacturer. The factory does not need the patient to love the list price. It needs the ranked list to include the product, preferably on a tier that does not send the prescription to a rival. Access to covered lives is a scarce shelf. The tool for buying that shelf is a concession schedule, a rebate if share targets are hit, a rebate if a competitor is disadvantaged, a rebate if the product is preferred. The factory will tolerate a high sticker if the sticker remains the measuring stick for deductibles and for rival bids, while the real fight happens in a side letter. Follow the independent pharmacy. The owner buys the bottle near the visible number, counts it, counsels the patient, and submits a claim that returns as a take-it-or-leave-it reimbursement. If that reimbursement lands below acquisition cost, the fill is a donation. If the contract allows later recoupments, the donation can arrive months after the patient has gone home. The owner cannot see what the plan was charged. The owner sees a network agreement that must be signed to remain visible to anyone carrying a commercial card. Follow the patient only as far as the incentive reaches. A deductible measured on billed charges can punish the household for a sticker the plan will never pay in full. A mandatory mail-order rule can move a maintenance drug out of a neighborhood store and into a warehouse affiliated with the manager. The patient did not sign the manager's contract. The patient is the traffic. These factions do not need a smoke-filled room. They need quarterly targets. The same fill is a cost to one party, a sale to another, a concession event to a third, and a margin event to a fourth. Then a holding company owns more than one of those parties. An insurer builds a manager. The manager prefers its own pharmacy. The claim never leaves the family, yet each affiliate can show a price. That is not automatically unlawful. It is a conflict that must be contracted around, disclosed, or ignored. Federal Trade Commission staff treat that structure as a central worry. The worry is not a verdict on every fill. It is a map of who can afford to lose a negotiation. In July 2024, the Federal Trade Commission releases an interim staff report on prescription drug middlemen. It is a staff document, not a courtroom verdict, not a finding that every household was injured. The language stays qualified. Incentives, potential effects, concentration, vertical integration, formulary influence, pharmacy effects. A public mirror held up to a private market. Watch a single specialty claim adjudicate. The physician has already sent the script. The profile is already open. In 1 second, software asks whether the product is covered, whether a prior authorization exists, whether a cheaper step is required, which pharmacy is allowed to dispense, and what the patient owes tonight. That second is the climax of a year of bargaining the patient never attends. Start with the rebate. A manufacturer and a manager negotiate a schedule. The schedule can pay more if the product wins preferred placement. It can pay more if rivals lose share. It can pay more if volume crosses a threshold. The payment is typically retrospective. The fill happens, data accumulate. A credit follows, weeks or months later, on terms the cash-paying patient will never read. Some contracts pass most of that money to the plan. Some retain a share as compensation. The same word, rebate, can mean a pass-through, a retained cut, or a hybrid. The word is not the mechanism. The schedule is. Because the schedule rewards share, the ranked list is not a textbook of comparative effectiveness. It can include comparative effectiveness. It can also include the threat to move lives. Two clinically similar brands enter a bid season. The winner is not always the lower list price. The winner is often the better net after the confidential money, plus the operational ease of putting one product on the preferred tier and making the other painful. Step therapy is a clinical tool. It is also a volume pump. Prior authorization is a safety tool. It is also friction loaded onto the product that lost. Now name the spread. The Government Accountability Office records that pharmacy reimbursement arrangements include spread pricing. The manager charges the health plan one figure and reimburses the pharmacy a smaller figure. Treat the next numbers as an illustration, not a cited invoice. A generic faces the plan at $42 and faces the pharmacy at $29. $13 remains with the intermediary on that claim. Neither figure has to equal the patient's copay. If the copay is $10, the patient has no view of the $13. If the copay is $35, the household may have paid more than the pharmacy received, depending on the contract and the state's rules. This is a mechanism, not a census. The point is the gap as a documented method of compensation, not a claim that every gap is large. Networks turn the gap into discipline. A pharmacy that will not accept the reimbursement exits or drops into a tier patients avoid. A preferred counter can receive better terms. An affiliated counter can receive the fill itself. Staff analysis treats the pattern as a reason for concern about how concentration and vertical integration can affect pharmacies that do not share a parent. Concern is not the same as a finding that every independent is paid below cost on every bottle. The bid season itself has a temperature. A medical director asks about outcomes. A finance director asks about the guarantee. The guarantee is a number the manager is willing to stand behind if the ranked list is followed. If the plan overrides the list for a sympathetic patient, the guarantee can shrink. Compassion becomes a variance. Variance becomes a meeting. The meeting trains the plan to stop overriding. Vertical integration tightens the loop. One enterprise can show a loss ratio here and a pharmacy margin there. A fill that looks expensive in one ledger can look profitable in another. Plan design can assign a lower copay to the affiliated mail facility, lock specialty products into an exclusive network, or block a local transfer after the first fill. Each rule can be defended as adherence, cold chain quality, or fraud control. Each rule can also move revenue to the affiliate. The staff report lingers on that double face. So do state statutes that try to police reimbursement or to demand that certain payments be passed through. Here, the two official records will not collapse into one sermon. The Accountability Office material treats the manager as a function. States are trying to regulate rather than abolish. A specialist who can extract concessions a small plan cannot extract. The Commission staff material documents concentration and conflict. Managers standing between factories, insurers, pharmacies, and patients with incentives that may not align with every stakeholder at once. May not. Potential. Staff. Interim. The qualifications are not ornaments. They are the difference between a market structure investigation and a blanket accusation. A pass-through contract with transparent administrative fees and no affiliated pharmacy can look like the brochure. A contract that retains concessions, uses spreads, and steers specialty fills to a sister pharmacy can look like a private surcharge on public confusion. Both can exist in the same year, in the same city, under the same job title. State houses keep writing rules on disclosure, reimbursement, and audit rights. Managers answer that disclosure can weaken manufacturer bargaining and that affiliated pharmacies compete like any other. Plans answer that the specialist now needs an auditor. Pharmacies answer that a competitor who writes the network is not like any other. Each answer is an incentive speaking, and then the claim leaves the switch. The manufacturer books a sale at list and records a later concession. The manager books a fee, a retained amount, a spread, or an affiliated dispensing margin, or some combination. The plan books a net cost that may be defensible and still unexplained. The pharmacy books reimbursement. The patient books a copay. 5 books, 1 bottle. No public ledger reconciles them in real time. The person at the register still has no way to know whether the hired cost controller reduced the bill or rearranged it. The market continues. The software will adjudicate again in the morning. There is a kind of firm that sells weather to people who live in it. A pharmacy benefit manager sells leverage in a storm of list prices, clinical variation, and claims volume. Leverage is a real commodity. A small plan cannot make a global manufacturer flinch. A large book of lives can. The hire is not irrational. The weirdness begins when the meter for the leverage is owned by the seller of the leverage, and the units on the meter are confidential. In ordinary agency, the principal pays a visible fee and audits the work. In this chain, part of the compensation is folded into the work product, a retained concession, a reimbursement gap, an affiliated fill. Opacity is not a stain on the brochure. Opacity is how a concession can be larger than a competitor's while remaining invisible to the household that still owes a percentage of the sticker. Sunlight would let the manufacturer see the rival's number, let the pharmacy see the plan's number, let the patient see both, and let the next manager undercut the meter. So the market produces just enough shadow to keep the product priced. This is why official documents can split in tone without splitting in subject. One record catalogs a function worth regulating because it does something sponsors still pay for. Another record catalogs concentration and conflicts because the same function can be aimed at several scores at once. The careful language is the story. Potential effects, staff analysis, selected states. Cartoons cannot hold both truths. The intermediary can lower a net and can be paid from how the net is calculated. Stand in a mail-order warehouse at 3 a.m. Conveyors move climate-controlled packages toward trucks. Each package is a clinical event and a financial instrument. Somewhere a schedule assigns a concession to that national drug code if last quarter share held. Somewhere a network rate assigns a reimbursement to that pharmacy identifier. Somewhere a plan design assigns a copay to that member. The conveyor does not reconcile those assignments. It prints a label. The aftertaste is not that households failed to shop. A person cannot shop a confidential schedule. The aftertaste is that a society tried to ensure a manufactured object whose price is a strategy, then hired a strategist, then discovered the strategist must keep the strategy partly unread in order to remain valuable. Customers carrying co-insurance, workers behind independent counters, suppliers of molecules, rival managers, entire specialty markets, all live inside that unreadness. List price, in this light, is neither a lie nor a market-clearing number. It is a chip pushed into the center of the table so that concessions, copays, and guarantees have something large to be measured against. Keep the chip high, and a rebate looks generous, a deductible looks fierce, and a net looks disciplined. The chip is doing work. A consultant will still arrive in a glass conference room with a chart of net trend. The chart can be honest and still fail to meet the receipt. The receipt was never built to tell the truth the chart is telling. They are different instruments, aimed at different principles, born from the same fill. If the only party who can fully audit the discount is the firm that lives on the discount, what did the health plan purchase? A lower bill? Or a story about a lower bill that cannot be read aloud?